GD Vegas Fulcha. Hello and welcome back to Craic on the Coast. I'm your host, Michael Schilling, joined as always by my co-host, Shaun Morgan. Shaun, how's the Craic today?
Not too bad, Michael. Looking forward to this one. We have a guest whose work takes us right to the heart of one of the most complex and important stories on the island of Ireland.
That's right. So today our guest is Rory Duffy, filmmaker, adjunct professor of history at City College, New York, and director of award-winning documentary A Fragile Peace Inside Brexit and Belfast. The film examines how Brexit is affecting the Good Friday Agreement. If for locals in the New England, Massachusetts area, the Fragile Peace was winner of documentary feature at the 2025 Mass International Film Festival. So locals that are listening to the podcast today might be familiar with it already, and if not, I would say go see it afterwards. But thanks so much for having us on, for being on, Rory.
Shaun, Michael, thank you for having me.
Yep. So, Rory, before we dive into the film itself, tell us a little bit about your story. How did you get started in the world of film and storytelling?
Well, I did my undergrad in film production, and I was an actor for many years. So I had walk-on roles in Law and Order SVU, playing, big surprise, an Irish New York City cop. Blue Bloods, The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. I did a bunch of theater, and so I had, done that for about 10, 15 years. And then I went back and got my master's in history at City College of New York, because it's a hard life being an actor in New York City. Even being from New York City, realizing, wow, this is a different type of lifestyle. And then while I was doing 3 O'Casey plays, the O'Casey trilogy at the Irish Repertory Theater, I started working on a documentary about whether violence would come back to Northern Ireland due to Brexit. I had a friend who worked for President Bill Clinton, and I was lucky enough to go to the 20th anniversary. And I got to see on the ground the former president come to Northern Ireland to kind of make a case for keeping the peace. And so that's kind of when the ball started getting rolling. And I initially thought I would catch a lot of the politicians coming to New York for interviews and whatnot, and I could film them in their hotel rooms, and I could get those kind of talking head moments. But then COVID hit, so I had to do a different plan. And so it was a lot of adapting, but usually the film started with that 20th anniversary and kind of ends at the 25th anniversary.
Now, obviously, with background in film, and then from there going background into history, with having the degree in history and being is obviously interested in it as you are, how does that shape your lens with regards to kind of entering the filming process on something of this magnitude?
Well, I mean, for pre-production, if you enjoy reading, doing a historical documentary is the best part of making the film, because you just go to the library and take out a bunch of books and close your door and read. So I researched as much as I could. I read about medieval history. I read about things that are not even touched upon in the film, but their influence on that area is there. So even reading about the North's experience in World War I, even though I don't go into it, that is part of the North's story. So that background allows you to kind of be a little harder to convince when it comes to Final Cut. And so I hope that I did my homework in making sure that everything is there on screen, has been well researched, and can be backed up by documentation or historical record.
And with a history background, I would also say, and I'd want your input on this as well, is it gives you a little bit more perspective to be unbiased when doing something like this. I mean, we've had other historians on our podcast, and that is one thing that they all kind of say is that they try not to give their opinion. They don't want to give their opinion. Everything's based on research and fact.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, but I will also, say that I am biased somewhat in this aspect. My family background is Catholic. My family's from Donegal. So I do lean to one side, so to speak. That is hard to overcome sometimes. But I'm the good thing is I'm not from there. I learned, and probably Shaun can probably agree with this. I learned how American I am by making a film about Ireland. I was very Irish before this film. I realized there might have been a few things that came over the Atlantic, but I'm very, very American. But I probably lean more to the Irish Republican. I try my best to give voice and light to people on the other side and acknowledge their argument. But at least for this film, I did not have a Netflix behind me. I might have had 14 shooting days. So I hope that people that do watch it go, wow, this looks amazing. This looks like a really well-made documentary. There were a lot of magic tricks that went on. So I used literally almost every interviewer, person that spoke to me in the film. The other side, because, let's say the Protestant Unionist side, it's a hard community to crack, especially if you're an outsider, if you are Irish American, if you're Catholic. They were very nice and welcoming, but for people to let you into their home for a documentary, it takes months and years sometimes to build that trust. And you have to harness that trust and not do a little bait and switch and say, oh, yeah, this is my intention, and then renege on that. So I tried to the best of my ability to, not have anybody that spoke to me have any surprises when they saw the film. But the initial story idea was three people from this political side, three on the other, kind of having them mirroring, like a unionist politician, a Republican politician, a Protestant farmer, a Catholic farmer, a Protestant young activist, and a Catholic young activist. And by the time we were establishing those relationships, it was March 2020. And so that's when production stopped.
Something happened?
Yeah.
Yeah, something happened.
Yeah.
And I think we're all kind of sick of hearing it. But you have to adapt, and that is filmmaking. And you just hope that the question that you're asking is powerful enough to propel the story forward. And I think I did have that. Will violence return? Will the peace agreement be able to withstand its greatest test? And even though there were lovely people that I was unable to get into the film, just the mere miracle of finishing it. So it's something I'm very proud of. I try to my best of my ability to not be biased, but it also is film. And
Sure.
film needs the drama, and it needs a point of view.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes
So,
playing safe
obviously-
is boring.
So you start off there, Rory, telling us you've worn a few hats, historian, actor, filmmaker, and you touched on your family being from Donegal. This documentary piece, which has the human experience intersecting with political, but ultimately tribalism. What pulled you towards that? Because it's such, and like you said, 14 days. You can barely scratch the surface.
Yeah.
But what pulls you in with regards to this is a story that needs to be shown, and again, the market, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, and I probably am, and that's okay. But this was for a US market. This was to try and put something in that regard. So how did you feel that, or why did you feel this was something important to bring to the United States to put in front and center in front of the Irish American market at that stage?
Well, it's happening here.
Was hoping you were going to say that.
Yeah, no, I mean there were people that were uh, this one fantastic minister, Gary Mason. He would take people from the Middle East, from other conflict zones, and bring them to spots in the north and say, this is what tribalism and political division and sectarianism can do to a society. And he said, like in the last 10 years, I'm bringing Republicans and Democrats because I don't think Americans realize what we're playing with in terms of um, the political division that is growing here. Initially, what brought my interest to the story of the Good Friday Agreement was it was just the first major political event that I remember growing up. I was around 14 when Clinton and Mitchell got it done. And I do have memories of that. So it was kind of like something personal for me. But I think in a short answer, just it's happening here. And um, if history is thy guide, um, look to what's happened in past events to go, let's not make that same mistake.
Sure. And you made the comment in other, pieces that I've read about is that the Good Friday Agreement is, I mean, it is a successful document in its essence. Obviously with Brexit happening and your experience there, there is obviously, there's still tensions, no matter what items come up. I mean, there's items that come up in everyday news today that, brings those tensions to light. But the agreement in itself has been successful and is a good framework for other situations. I mean, we're sitting here today and we try not to delve too much into politics in this podcast, but at the same time,
Thank you for having me on.
International politics. I think we're well versed in Irish politics.
Yes. But what is going to have to move forward with regards to the situation in Gaza? They're going to have to put together a framework that is going to be very successful, and the Good Friday Agreement is a framework for that. So
yeah, it is the only modern one that has worked.
But I
looking at the Treaty of Versailles.
I'd play contrarian in that and say, while it's successful, there are major flaws in there that need to be learned from.
Mm-hmm.
While the GFA has created sustainable peace, I mean, it's been 25 years, 26 this year. But the other aspect is there's huge glaring holes in there that existed where, I mean, you look in that time period, the amount of times that Stormont has shut down. That power sharing has completely failed because one side, and both sides are guilty of this, whether it's Republican, whether it's Unionist, if one party decides they're taking their ball and going home, then that's it. It falls apart and you go back to direct rule from Westminster. So while it has been successful in putting an established peace in place, as far as a functioning form of long-term government, it's not a model that I would say as someone from the North that this is what you transplant to somewhere else. Because it's not sustainable. And I think the last time around and the last threats, I mean, you had, I think the last threat of shutdown, it was 51% of the MLAs wanted the government to start operating, but because one party said we're out, we're not doing it, that's it. So there is an aspect where it should be renewed, and they're not there yet. And obviously we know some of the focus right now, before we go down a rabbit hole deeper, is the push in the New Ireland Forum and discussions even the last week as far as we need to start having serious discussions about reunification. Well, that's going to be part of the discussion there as far as what does that look like. And Rory, I'd love to hear your take and the conversations you had with, identity, because that's the biggest part with Brexit as well. And that's what drove Brexit is identity politics. And it was, do I identify as European or I do identify as British? And then Northern Ireland, that played in heavily into tribal politics of, am I Irish, therefore European, or am I British, therefore anti-EU?
I mean, so such timely conversation with our government shutdown as we talk about Westminster, and I totally agree with you on some of those aspects. There are like the reconciliation aspect. Uh, there are, there's problems with the Good Friday Agreement. I think it could be amended. It could be changed. I think 25 years, at least in my opinion, proves that it is working. To go back and maybe make some changes so that one party saying we don't want to show up can silence 51%. Um, that's not a functioning system to have. Um, Now, the identity politics that drove Brexit, yeah, I mean, initially, I think with Brexit itself, I mean, immigration, the NHS, all those played such a huge role. While the conversation was happening, I do think the impact on the North was not in the conversation, and then it became the main sticking point, this border. And so I personally think with the amount of prime ministers we have seen come and gone and what Brexit has done to the political, just fabric of the UK society, I would say it hasn't been a success. Um, but with identity politics in the North, it's interesting because it's almost generational. What I found with the younger kids, uh, it's like being an American and seeing like their interest in Black Lives Matter or the issues that are big here and it translating over there. Um, I was really surprised by that. Really tied into a much more European point of view or identity, rather than the Protestant and the Catholic aspects. I mean, one aspect I wanted to investigate, which I didn't, that always breaks my heart, was the rise in suicide rates after the Troubles had ended and how that plays into identity when you had that conflict as a means of giving one an identity. Now the conflict is gone and people go, okay, well, who am I now? So that peace generation, I don't think suffers from it, but I think the older generation um, does. And, um, the mere fact that I think it's like 2%, maybe 3%, my numbers could be wrong, that all the people that were let out of jail that were not returned or did not go back to jail just meant that like it was all conflict oriented,
Hmm.
that it's fascinating and like unbelievable that you remove this one thing and it's not one thing, it's a very, very big thing, but all of a sudden all these people that, they weren't just criminals, they were people in a conflict.
I'm just processing for a minute
Yeah,
because again,
no, it's
I'm 40,
same
I'm
here.
42 years old, so I lived at that period. Good Friday Agreement was signed 98, so I was 15 when it was signed. I still remember when the first ceasefires hit and the second ceasefire and all of this running through, and it was an aspect of hope, and that was the driving force, and that was my generation moving in. But the jumping forward, and obviously I had moved to the United States by the time Brexit came about, watching that happen. And it definitely played in, and you touched on it, Rory, with regards to Brexit was a UK focus, UK drive. The question of Northern Ireland came after. But that's always been the theme in that, from at least from my perspective as an Irish nationalist and a Republican, is the basis that Northern Ireland has always been an afterthought,
Yes.
that it hasn't been a driving. I mean, I would put that to my unionist friends growing up as like, listen, it's the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. You're not even included in the full title. You're not
Mhm.
considered a part of Great Britain.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, you know, um, no, then the flip side, I'd say it in tongue and cheek is like, yeah, but at least the flag is there. I mean, the Welsh don't even get put on the flag. They're just cropped right in. But and my Welsh friends get it. My Welsh friends get annoyed at that, but that's fine.
We love our Welsh
Um,
friend. Yes. Well,
but
I mean,
the
I do, one thing that you mentioned that about like the unity question, because like, it's a hard thing because like film is a visual medium, and
Mhm.
uh, I thought about this very long and hard, how to present uh, an audience that might be walking out of the theater thinking, "Oh, this is going to happen." We're right on the cusp of history. My own personal view is if there is a reunification movement, it would take a decade minimum, um, and be incredibly uh, uh, negotiated, and it would take so long. It is not something that could happen overnight by any stretch of the means, given how much the North is dependent on the UK for social services. Maybe you'd have to have EU money. Maybe you could use Germany post World War II reunification as a template. But like, this is not something that I think is going to be uh, within a year or two. I think it would be at least minimum 10 years if it was going to move forward, because you need the South to sign off on it, and it's such a big question. But there is a possibility for that.
Yeah, and
I mean, one thing, I mean, not to, sorry, Mike, I was just gonna say, I mean, not to, but to bring it to Brexit, and I think one thing that's happening with programs like the New Ireland Forum that's taking place in the discussions is they're trying to avoid the mistake of Brexit, which the biggest mistake of Brexit was it was a yes no question. That was it.
Mhm. Yeah.
It was put a yes no referendum to the people, and then we'll figure it out after the fact. And then they realized, all right, we're up the creek without a paddle. We don't know how to figure this out.
Yeah.
Whereas, I mean, I know for a fact, again, coming from an Irish nationalist, Irish Republican background, if there was a yes no referendum put today in Northern Ireland, the vast majority, no matter what they say, when you get down to the nitty gritty, a lot of people would vote no based upon their experiences of Brexit and the mess there,
Mm.
without questions being answered as far as, and I'm going with my own discussion with my own father on this, where what happens to my pension I paid into in the British government my whole life?
Yeah.
What happens to what happens to NIH, which doesn't exist in the South? Education systems are completely different. How do you have, I mean, it's coming back and remembering outside of an American lens, it's been over 100 years that the South and Northern Ireland have diverged. And while culturally there are those who exist there, you also have very different institutions that have been established, and you can't just wave a magic wand and expect to go back. So that is, getting back to your film as well, a theme that comes from Brexit and that hopefully is being discussed. So yeah, 10 years, that's a low ball estimate, I would say.
Oh, totally. No,
Yeah.
no, totally.
Eh,
I mean, Brexit might have supercharged it a little bit, but I mean, yeah, no, it is by no means easy. I mean, getting down to like passports. I mean, it would be so uh detailed on every aspect of a society. Like it's not a simply, changing of uniforms and a flag. It would be every aspect of a society. So, I mean, I would say I would like to see it in my lifetime, but I mean, I don't think it's going to happen in the 2020s. I would say maybe 2030s if there's like some forward momentum on it. But
in one discussion, I mean, Shaun and I have had this discussion a litany of times. We both, and you can, if I'm wrong, Shaun, but we both have had the discussion that if anything's going to move the ball forward, it's going to be economics. I mean, that's just the way of the world. And that is probably one of the big shocking moments I had during the course of Brexit is that a lot of it was based on, a lot of the problems with Brexit was based on economics of the North and how trade would work. And I feel like that is that them being ignorant of that might be the first leg up on actually being able to open up a discussion with the people of the, because I mean, you have a lot more experience with this, Shaun, currently. But talking to everybody, the economic situation of the North is only improving based off of what's occurred because of Brexit.
Yeah, I mean, they have the best of both worlds. I mean, they're still can tap into the EU market and still be part of whatever sweetheart deals the UK government can work out. But again, the aspect of, like you said, the economics, how they got there, it was, again, Northern Ireland didn't come into question with regards to the Brexit thought, and not whether it's Northern Ireland as a function, but the Good Friday Agreement as well, looking at that, even the concept of Brexit violated the Good Friday Agreement, which is a UN sanctioned peace agreement. So again, that gets back to that aspect of you were playing on tribal politics in the UK, you were playing on economic fears and economic woes that people were having,
Mhm.
and blaming it on the other, the foreign, which again we can relate to now. Here, it's easy to do that, to prey on people's fears of, look over there, look at the other that's coming to
Yeah.
take at, and it was the EU's fault,
Hmm.
you know.
I mean, well, you're in Plymouth, correct?
Yes.
Right. I mean, like even, it goes back to that like Salem witch trials aspect, right? That there's something corroding the society, and if we remove that, the society will be better. So like we seem to be going through this all the time. Like, yeah, witch trials, it was women. Right now in America, could be thinking like it's the immigrants. If we remove that,
We're
Brexit the
all we're
same
always
way.
causing problems. We're always
Yeah,
just
hey,
causing issues.
But with regards to the economic point, I mean, and I don't want to spoil too much of the actual documentary itself because I want people to go and search for it and watch it. But you open up with a great spot with the farmer whose property literally just is sitting right on the border. And the idea that the
oh yeah,
border is right down the middle of a street, and how if there's a hard border, the complications that come with that and the economic complications that come with that, how they're
yeah.
going to actually function as a farm. It really does. It opens up.
Oh, there was churches where the pews are in one country and then the graveyard is in another. And there was another person, we didn't quite get to shoot with them, but their living room was in one country and the kitchen was in the other. And it's really hard to wrap your mind around. But yeah, Damien the farmer, and political activist, yeah, he does his little thing on that border where I step here, I'm in one country, I step here in the other. How do you police it? And that can be smuggling. That could be, will it be a physical barrier? Just the questions it unleashed and the uncertainty that a lot of these people lived under. It was stressful. I mean, I felt my heart went out to Damien because, I'm a New York guy and, I have my dogs, but a farmer and his connection to his animals that's family. And talking to these farmers that, if it's a hard Brexit and we can't, the milk from the cow would have to be, I don't know all the ins and outs of a farmer, but they would have to cull the herd, and like how hard that would have been for these people. It would have been heartbreaking for them. So like there were real stakes at place.
Sure. Now getting more into, oh, sorry, Shaun. Getting more into the function of the documentary itself. I mean, you said you only had 14 days. At the same time, you were able to get into rooms with Mary Lou McDonald and Richie Neal and get one-on-ones with Richie Neal. How were you able to facilitate that? Because I thought that was a great part of the being able to be in those rooms and see those conversations as everything was unfolding is important.
Yeah, fly on the wall kind of stuff when it comes to filmmaking, I think is always much more interesting than, talking heads, so to speak, like when you can actually take people to a historic event. That's why I kind of end with the scene of Brexit happening in the film to really bring the audience there. But maybe I should clarify. I had 14 days myself in the North, but I filmed a lot in America. So we sat down with Congressman Neal. We snuck into on my day off from doing the O'Casey plays to the Harvard Club where Congressman Neal and Senator Mitchell were speaking at a Brexit relations conference. And to any filmmakers that are out there, do it and then ask for forgiveness. Don't ask for permission first. Just get the footage.
Sure.
And so, at least with Congressman Neal, and I think cynicism is growing so much in this country. He is not my congressman. He really didn't have any reason to sit down with me. I am just a guy from New York City making a film that doesn't have a name, that doesn't have Hulu, Netflix behind him. And I reach out to his office and they take my phone call and it's an issue that he particularly cares about. And they first said, we'll give you 45 minutes, but you get a lot of these politicians talking about an event they like. They give you an hour and a half. And so it's very easy to just be like, oh my God, politicians are so bad, or the government is something all the way out there. No, you can call these people up and you can hassle them and you can get a sit down interview if you're persistent. And I think I'm assuming that his office gave me the first interview, and then because COVID happened, we put out about a 30-minute film, kind of don't lose hope in us, people. This is what it looks like. It looks really good. I think his office saw that and said, wow, this is looking really nice. And then they opened up some more doors to me. And then they had that meeting in DC and they said, if you want to come down, if you can get there, we'll let you in. And so you clear the schedule and you go. And they were great. It was unbelievable to shoot in the Capitol.
Do you have a follow-up, Shaun?
So, yeah, I mean, I just want to tons of follow-ups. I mean, I could spend hours talking to you, Rory. I'm actually going to plan ahead and think a way to get UMass Boston and your institution to start working together a little bit on some of this stuff in our reconciliation departments. But the theme that hit me the most, well, one of many, but one at the very start is Brexit as a disruptor. And that comes across as that it was a force that completely disrupted local politics. It disrupts policy. It disrupted everyday life. I mean, really, what it did was we had this peace for, since 1998, since the Good Friday Agreement. We're now in 2016, 2017, and it seems all these fault lines are opening back up again. And it's around obviously trade, but looking at national sovereignty, identity, and border politics. And how did it feel like being an outsider and looking at that and watching it all fold out live in front of you?
Well, I mean, it was pretty early on where I did get the sense, my initial question, and I knock on wood, that the troubles would not return. Like this threat of violence, that maybe there's a difference between like a flare up and the genie coming out of the bottle. And so it was about halfway through I went, oh wow, something else is actually going on here. And being there on the ground, witnessing history, or just being able to be introduced to these people who lived like incredible lives. Like Martina Anderson should be a documentary in and of herself. Like her story could be its own film. With her experiences, with her, being involved in the conflict, and then going into politics and being on the front lines of the Brexit discussion, and being a woman doing this. I mean, she could be her own film. So just being exposed to that is such a privilege. And the identity stuff was a little, if I may speak just personally, it was disturbing because you can see how that could really erode a society where it can get out of hand really, really quick. And my biggest fear is that we're seeing that happening here, where Democrats and Republicans, like the political divide is just getting a little too deep and a little too uncomfortable for me. And being over there but still having a little bit of my mind back in the United States, was going, okay, is this like almost like a petri dish for what's happening like over in this other country, my country? Is this a warning sign? Like, what is actually going on? Because I do think a lot of the people that were pro-Brexit, a lot of their, anger, I get it. Like, people are struggling economically. Trump voters I can disagree with them on a lot of elements, but, I think if you look at, where American economy is, the quality of life, like people are disenfranchised and they're looking for something. And Brexit was somewhat of a middle finger to the establishment. And I think Trump is as well. It doesn't, I might disagree, but it doesn't negate that I do think these people do have struggles. They might just be going about it in a way that I completely disagree with. But being there and seeing it was just the historian in me it was pretty cool.
Mhm. It's funny you talk about having that wherewithal. I mean, Shaun and I have both been at events that surrounded the 25th anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement, and we witnessed a situation where representatives of all the parties in the North are there, and there's two things that they can actually agree on. One, that Brexit was a mess, and two is the Legacy Act and the repeal of that. And so there is common ground. There is, like you said, there is tribalism, but in the end, there is common ground to be had. And if you have perspective on what other people are going through, then that helps.
Yeah, there was the EU, and I don't go into it in the film, but the EU it played a role as well in the peace agreement, because nations in isolation, that's when you start othering other people. There were probably people, in the EU from both sides of the divide, let's say, that were negotiating like the shape of bananas or the size of a bolt on something, and doing really minute, let's say, quote unquote, boring things like that. But those experiences were the foundation when they had to negotiate the hard stuff during the Good Friday Agreement, where they said, you know what? I can work with so and so. We discussed, EU policy on the shape of bananas. I can trust him, and we've worked together. And you think those nations and interactions between representatives can be those building blocks to peace. And I don't go into the film thinking too much with the EU's element on the Good Friday Agreement, but they were a player as well in terms of, a forum where trust was established between politicians that mattered later down the line.
Now, going forward, obviously, Shaun brought it up. I mean, the documentary really probably is meant for, a U.S. audience, Irish diaspora. Is there, in your head, did it change what you wanted your audience to take out of the documentary from when you started filming to when you finished and finally have it released at the festivals?
Well, I got to quote a great Astoria native, Tony Bennett, who said, "I sing for the whole family. I make movies for everybody." I tried to make it as universal as I could. In terms of, my wife she's from Korea, and she had no knowledge of what was happening in the North. And I always thought, if I can get her to like the film, want to see what happens next, understand in a very simple film sense, because a book and a film are two different things. I'm never going to satisfy everybody. People are going to be like, you didn't go into this, you didn't go into that. It's like, it's a visual medium. Like, if this gets people to pick up, a book on the Troubles or the Good Friday Agreement, great. That's where you can go into all the details. If I can get her to want to see what happens next and understand, oh, I got to know this character, that character, then I can make sense of it. Then I did my job. I want people, like getting Shaun's approval of the film means a lot to me. That's his home. That's his community. And if he goes, you know what, this guy did a good job, fair play to him, great. I want people in other regions of the world to get something from it, because conflict is a universal story. It's not by any means, a monopoly in terms of America or the North having it. It's universal, and I hope I made it for the widest audience. If there's anybody from Netflix listening, we made it to sell it to you. We filmed it to meet your camera needs, which were really expensive. So I wanted to get to the largest audience possible because I think it's a story that deserves that at its base.
Great. That's fantastic.
So on that, Rory, telling this story, it's not easy, especially again, I'll keep harping back at this, the lens of an outsider, regardless of family history and being part of the diaspora. And obviously take the expense away because that's probably one of the biggest hurdles. What were some of the other hurdles and challenges that you faced, whether it's, well, logistically, politically, emotionally, before, the world ended in March 2020?
Well, the hardest thing, like the shots that, at least in the film, that mean the most to me, that were the hardest to get, were shots of, people in their homes. So it might not seem like, oh my God, you got into DC. Politicians do want to be filmed in the age of a visual medium. They're looking for really good cameras to be on them. But a private person who lets you see them sitting on the couch with their family watching television, those are hard to get. Now, hurdles, yeah, raising money is always really, really hard. And I was lucky enough to get some really great support from grants at the right moment that could get me over there. Filming it so that it meets the standards of streaming services ups the budget, but just time and access to people. It's always, it's nothing new. I know every documentarian is having the same thing. We don't have enough time. We don't have enough money. And you get into the editing room and you go, I really want to look at, Bobby Sands. And you go, well, we have nobody talking about it. We have no cutaways. We can't do it. And so you have to strike that from the story. So there's a lot of heartbreak on the kind of editing floor where you're like, we didn't get to go into that.
Well, maybe someday you'll be Ken Burns and they'll just, hand you a bunch of time and a bunch of money and you can do what, like how long is the revolutionary one that's supposed to be starting soon? It's like 10 segments or something.
It was hard enough getting an hour and a half done. I love the North. I love the people of the North. I'm handing it off to somebody else to do the 15-hour part. The next time I go to the North, I just want to relax and visit all the Game of Thrones sites. I mean, the North, I love it. I cherish it. It's amazing to see what's happened to that place, to go to restaurants and go, I feel like I'm in Brooklyn. I feel like I'm in a hipster restaurant in Brooklyn. This is utterly amazing. And they're filming all the best shows there. I mean, the North it's such a wonderful place to visit. It is safe. It is welcoming. I think there's some of the greatest people in the world. And if you're a film nerd, I mean, the best shows are being filmed there now. I mean, it's a hub of television production, and you have the Titanic Museum. I mean, there's so much to see there.
So now moving forward, the documentary released, you've screened it at I wouldn't even say a few, a lot of different film festivals. Like I said, here in the Massachusetts International Film Festival. What's been the response so far? Obviously, you won documentary feature here, but what's been the audience response so far as you've been making the circuit?
Well, the best response has been winning Best Picture in London. I mean, that one felt a little good. Usually a documentary doesn't take Best Picture. It doesn't take the main prize in a festival. This one did. The reception has been amazing. I mean, it's, I think when you're able to get people in a room and watch a film collectively and have that collective experience, it is, I've yet to meet too many people that really dislike the film. It does start conversations. People have pulled me aside and told me they didn't like something about it, but for the most part, it is doing its job. It's starting conversation. The response has been wonderful. We are now starting to ease up the festival circuit and start bringing it to Irish organizations for screenings and talkbacks. We're hoping that we'll have some fruitful meetings with streamers so that it can get on one of these platforms and get out to a really wide audience. I don't think a theatrical release is on the horizon. I don't think people go to the movies as much as they used to. I will say, go see one battle after another. It is a masterpiece. But I mean, Hollywood is now adjusting to like seeing it in different formats. See it in 70 millimeters, see it in VistaVision. I mean, so like that is how Hollywood is trying to get people into theaters. Documentaries don't really do that. We are in the golden age of documentary on Netflix and Hulu and streaming services. So I think if you can get on a streaming service, that's your best bet to a wide audience.
So, with regards to the audience aspect, especially, here in the internationally, but here in the US, do you think the documentary like lets them see that Brexit and the peace process are tied together? But then beyond that, that Brexit, even though the vote took place, I mean, we're coming up on 10 years. 10 years ago, it's still not over. Brexit is still being questioned. It's still being discussed daily in Northern Ireland. Its knock-on effects are still there. How have you seen those conversations come to fruition, or have they been coming about?
Well, I mean, I don't think the Brexit conversation is going to end in the next 5 years. I think this move by the UK is one of the biggest political moves post World War II. Especially coming at a time where we're seeing the first war in Europe, major war in Europe post World War II. So just the stability of Europe to a point, a place that was a hornet's nest of war for many, many years. I don't see that conversation ending anytime soon, but I also don't think there's going to be a second referendum.
So what's next then? I mean, obviously you want not just for the documentary itself, but you. Like, what do you see next?
After doing the north of Ireland, I figure out why don't I just go full gamut and do the wife's film for Korea, the Korean War.
I do not think you would be able to do that in 90 minutes. That
To be continued, because that conflict is still going on.
Yeah. I was gonna say you're not getting into Pyongyang anytime soon to get anything filmed. So
if I may tell a little anecdote, just my lovely wife entertains me when I'm nerding out on a camera shot. And my favorite shot in the film is when the drone is going over the Falls Road and comes down perfectly. It's a great shot. I mean, it ends right on a lamppost. It's framed perfectly. I mean, I could watch that shot in and of itself just to make myself feel better for a day. And I remember, very pretentiously trying to explain it to my wife, going, "Oh my God, these people live over here and they live over there. If you want to go to the coffee shop, you have to walk 2 miles over this way and they're divided." And she goes, "Wow, that's a really great shot." I've never met anybody from North Korea in my life. And I was like, whoa,
wow,
that's wild.
That
I mean,
is.
to like think that in that political division, like you never even met the other side, let alone, it's like, that's their group over there or their area over there. And because I was in the north in Belfast for Halloween, and I'm from New York City. I mean, Halloween's huge. The West Village has a huge parade, and it was quiet, and it was a lovely night. And the person we were with was like, "Oh yeah, people just go back to their areas." It's like, I was like, wow, that's really interesting. So my wife has actually never even met anybody from the north of Korea, North Korea. But for me, I got a short that I've been thinking about expanding into a longer project called Memories from Ground Zero. My dad was a New York City fireman, so I come from a fire department family. And, going back to like what Shaun says, like, I'm having my own little like, oh, I was able to do a film about the north of Ireland because I am an outsider. And then when I'm trying to do something about something that hit my family pretty close. I procrastinate. But I've been getting that one out. It's kind of like like an oral history, talking to survivors and people that were there. So that's in some festivals right now, and it's gaining some awards. So I'm thinking maybe I'll expand that. But then I'm also working on one called about urban planning. I might be adapting a book about building cities and urban environments that are more walkable, more community based. Because I do think one of the things that is, increasing political division in the United States is that, we're not having dinner parties, we're not talking to each other, we're not waving at each other. We're in our cars, isolated, go to work, and then come home, and we're in our little silos. So, can we build environments that are actually improving our quality of life and having a impact in terms of making American communities stronger? So we're thinking those are probably the two I'm developing right now.
That's a great concept. I like that. I,
Yeah,
I have
yeah,
a lot of
walkable city.
respect for documentarians because, and you talked about Ground Zero. It is time. You can't slow it down. You can't stop it, but it does really hit me when I think that there's not a college student today that was alive
Yeah.
when September 11th happened. And that's
the difference between history and memory.
Yeah, it really is.
It
Yep, and on that note, I'm going to go play in traffic. It's just feeling old, so that's great.
We're not going to age though, Shaun. We're stuck in time. We're in formaldehyde.
That's it, man. That's it. I'll just be Peter Pan. That's fine.
Well, I want to thank you, Rory, for coming on today. This is a great conversation. I didn't totally know where it was going to go, mainly because of Shaun's background, but I'm always fascinated when we get to have really in-depth discussions. And I hope that people listen to the podcast and are really intrigued to go and find the documentary. So because it's not on a streaming platform, what is the best way for someone to access it right now?
Right now, you can rent the film for $5.99 at afragilepiecefilm.com. There's a link there. And your money goes to, marketing the film, still trying to quote unquote finish the film, because the cut that's in the film, that we have right now, there's a lot of other music and archive that still needs to be, purchased and whatnot. I mean, that prices documentaries up through the roof. I mean, you can make the film for X dollars, but you could spend 150,000 on archive. So even, making sure that we can buy that archive, get the release forms, and we are using all the money that we kind of get from rentals to getting that purchased. So fragilepiecefilm.com, you can rent the film. It will be screening in Fordham University soon. Then I'm taking it up to Maine in the new year. But basically, if you visit the website or Fragile Piece Film Instagram, that's where all the updates are, and you can catch the film through those links.
That's great. We'll put all those links in our show notes when the podcast releases. So for anyone that's interested in seeing it, which I would recommend, I think it's a great job. Even in its current form, without all the other licenses and everything, I'd definitely go on and support it. It's short money to have a really big impact. So definitely. Shaun, any final thoughts?
It doesn't just document, the events. It's a reflection piece. And I think, Rory, to go back to what you said earlier, it opens up a thought process, and hopefully it opens up someone to say, I want to pick up a book and learn more about what happened, what is happening, and even go further, based upon this podcast and what's in there, as far as, all right, well, for those who often travel to Ireland, and I talk about this all the time. I talk about the students at my university, they travel over, they go to Dublin, they go to Galway, they go to Kerry. All right, great. We'll head up to Belfast. head up to
Yeah.
Derry, head up north and see what's there because the island as a whole is unbelievable and you don't understand your Irish heritage until you see all parts of Ireland and go from there. So
I might sound biased again. I mean, my favorite people are in the north.
that's
I
so because
mean,
the best people are up in the north. And
yeah, no,
I'll
I
throw this
mean,
out there. And this is Mike. I'm going to say something. This is where we'll lose listeners, but the best crisps are in the north as well. I don't know about that southern Tato, but it's Tandragee Tato is where everything is. So
Ooh, he's cutting deep.
I
He's
mean,
cutting deep.
I just second that. I mean, I love going to the north. Um, I cannot wait to take my wife to Ireland, and the first city we are going to will be Belfast.
There you go, Shaun.
yeah, well, you let me know when that's happening, and I'll set you up left, right, and center as well. So
I mean, like I will definitely be taking you up on that. And just from a personal aspect, I mean, showing people like yourself that, grew up there and have personal experiences. Um, it's hard for me to put into words what it means to make a film and have people from there watch it and uh, enjoy it. Like getting their approval means means so much to me. And when it elicits the conversation, um, that makes me know that I did my job.
well, you did a great job, man. I'll put
Sean,
that
thank
there,
you
and
very
I'm not
much.
going to give any more spoilers, but it is a must watch. For anyone who has an interest in Irish history, Irish politics, the diaspora, European politics, UK, whatever your background, it definitely has so many there. And like you said, the thematic aspect comes back to what we're experiencing today in the United States and across the globe. I have this conversation with my eldest all the time. What we're seeing in the US, regardless of what your position is a microcosm because it's taking place all over the world. I mean, the issues in the US are taking place in Germany, they're taking place in France, in the
Yeah.
UK,
Hmm.
and Latin America.
Hmm.
So this is an economic issue that's being played out and tribal politics being used to push economy, which is what has always happened.
Yes,
And
Yep.
Brexit is just another example of that.
Yeah.
exactly. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. Well, again, Roy, I just want to say thank you for
Well,
coming on. Um, this was a great conversation. I'm really glad we had you on. Thank you so much.
No, thank you.
yep.
Thank you both for having me. Thank you for, the war over eyeballs it's impossible now. And to get people to watch a film, it's so hard. And so the fact that you guys both did it and then brought me on here, it's a huge help. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. You're
Yep.
welcome.
Thank you. And Mike, before we wrap up, do you want to lead into what we've got going on down the road for Craic on the Coast?
Yeah. It's all. We always have something going on. It feels like lately. We got a couple. We have a we have a teaser. We're going to do a special Halloween episode before the big day at the end of the month. We're going to dive into the Festival of Samhain, and we're going to have a special guest on, which will give a little bit more information for that as we get closer. And then I feel like we've been on location more often than not lately. And we're going to be on location again down at the Old Triangle in Hyannis, Mass, where they've just been officially certified to have a perfect pint by Guinness. So I think we have to go down and actually test that out.
I'm starting to see a theme here, Mike, with regards to where we end up going on location.
I know, but it's called Craic on the Coast for a reason. So we're gonna head down there, celebrate with them. Maybe our friend Mike Reardon from Guinness will join us, and they should. I'm excited to go down there and have a good time. So it should be a great night there.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Sounds good. I mean, we've got perfect pint, some lore, little mythology thrown in there. We've got the next few weeks sorted out for us.
Yeah, definitely. And that'll be it for episode 20 of Craic on the Coast. Again, a big thank you to Rory Duffy for being on today's show. And the best way to promote and support Rory is to go on, which, like I said, the links will all be in the show notes for you to go on and watch the documentary and share what you think with a friend. And with regards to sharing with a friend, you should share our show too with a friend. So the best way to do that is to subscribe, leave a review, and you can follow us on Instagram at Craic on the Coast, or if you want to send us an email, you can do that as well at craiconthecoast@gmail.com. That's CRAIC on the coast @gmail.com. And until next time, slán go foil.
Slán.